Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Control Report Podcast, episode 140. Benjamin Yoder here to talk to you about video games, or a wide variety of different video game topics, I guess. Looking at my list here, I actually have a pretty long list of notes here, but hopefully we'll be able to get through most of this. Actually, not super long, but I think I can talk about a lot of these. First things first, just to kind of clean up some stuff from last week. I finished my second playthrough of A Way Out with my other friend, and that was fun and had a good time. I'll try to see if I can find the podcast in which I talked about A Way Out more in depth. I tried to look for it last week, and I had a little bit of trouble finding it. I think for some reason, A Way Out as a keyword search on my website is just not good, and it brought back every single podcast that I've recorded or something. So I might just need to go back and go through the history of podcasts and find if I can find exactly which one it was. And I'll link that in the description if you are curious about more A Way Out stuff. I also finished the God Eater 2 character episodes. Nothing really new there. The last set of character episodes I had were for a character called Kigurumi, which, if you're not aware, Kigurumi is I guess you could call a giant animal suit kind of thing. I usually hear it in context of those animal suit pajamas that you'll sometimes see at conventions and things like that. But he's a guy in a giant bunny suit, or a lady in a giant bunny suit. They never say. And the whole thing's oh, what is the identity of this person in the giant bunny suit? And, unsurprisingly for a joke character, spoilers, you don't actually find out anything about that character, but it's silly, learning, or them trying to learn more about this person on their team. But otherwise, I actually accidentally missed our last God Eater session for the multiplayer stuff because I fell asleep when I got home. So no new updates on that. But we're getting pretty close to the end. I'm missed story mission 130 out of 160. So, it's taken a long time, but we're getting there. So that's mainly the stuff I talked about last week, but I do have a few other things to talk about. One is I did play some more Dojin games. One is Occult Adventure, which isn't really a game, or Occult ADV, but it's not really a game. It's more of just a prototype, and it looks really good, I'll say. Presentation-wise, it looks really nice. But it is just very simple. Basically, you can walk around a classroom, pick up a juice box, throw away the juice box, and then go out inside into a hallway where you can interact with a gate, which will then end the demo if you interact with the gate. And as you walk around, it's a horror game, by the way. And as you walk around, it actually, I think there's a random chance every time you are moving or every time you click or something that a ghost will spawn, or a ring style lady schoolgirl, and they'll come and grab you, and that'll be the end of the demo otherwise. So it's just kind of like a showpiece. There's no real objective other than just to click on that gate. And the only thing that prevents you from opening that gate is if the ghost girl is spawned. You can't actually do it while she's in the same room as you. So I assume the intention is you'd go into the classroom, have her chase you in there, and then go out and then go click on the gate again. Is my assumption. I never really bothered trying to get through the gate after she had already spawned. But presentation-wise, it looks really good, and control-wise, it's a point-and-click adventure game, but it also is pretty easy to kind of move about. Unfortunately, I don't know who made it. I tried to look up online some information, and I couldn't find any information. And I checked the game I have, and I don't see any contact info. I'll have to double check to see if there's a README or something, but I don't recall there being a README file on the disc either. So I may be out of luck of following up to see if the developer ever does anything with that prototype. But it's an interesting little thing, especially because of how simple it was. As a consumer who plays games, you don't really get a lot of chances to just see weird little prototype kind of stuff that's not really meant to be a game. The Redash thing where it's just Beck from Mighty Number 9 running around kicking a can. You don't get to see those kind of things very often publicly. So it's nice to see this. And then also it's very polished visually, which was kind of surprising. The other thing I played is a game called Solomon Program. I forget if I talked about this on a previous episode or not, but in the Occult community, there was this big hubbub that came up around this magazine because it included a demo key for a game that featured Occult characters in it. So it's like a strategy RPG, but in that strategy RPG, there's two Occult girls in there. If you don't know, if you're, for some reason this is your first podcast, Tokal is this rhythm game that I currently have an obsession over and am making a video about at the moment. Rowan, who's been on the podcast before, offered to get the magazine for me, so he got that and then gave me the download code for the game. And it's kind of interesting. It's the kind of game I'm really awful at. Basically, it's a strategy RPG, but you don't really control your individual characters much. They basically act on their own, and then you can kind of influence how they act through changing, I guess you could call it like their AI slots. There's like a chart that they basically go through and ask questions of like, hey, is there an enemy within this many spaces of me? What type of enemy are they? And then if I confirm this type of enemies within 6 spaces of me, what should I do? Should I move? Should I try to attack? Things like that. And it's kind of interesting to see. I'm really bad at that kind of logic programming. So every time I try to touch that, I typically made the character worse. So I just kind of reverted it back to the default standards for them. But I actually liked it quite a bit. There is some player interaction while you play through it. You have the ability to trigger like certain special moves. You can also switch like the priority of certain action chains, I guess you could call them. So you can like move around what checks it does first and things like that on a turn. But it just has like a really nice presentation. I'm pretty sure looking at it, and it makes sense given that there's a Tokadol characters in there. And if you're not familiar with Oreka, that's a game that's running on the same hardware as a Tokadol, and that's like an RPG. And some of the characters from Oreka are in Solomon program as well. And then, some of the presentation looks very much like those two games. So I really get the feeling that this is probably the developer of those two games that's working on Solomon program. So it's kind of interesting to see them do a console game since both Oreka and Tokadol are arcade games. I don't know what their actual team name is. Their development team in Konami, so I don't think they really talk too much about, individual groups within their organization. But it is pretty exciting that they have something that I can actually play at home kind of thing. I did play the game on stream a little bit, so I'll definitely link that at the end of the video version of the podcast and also in the description of the podcast. It's like me playing it for like an hour, and it's the first time I played the game on that stream, so I don't have quite the understanding to really explain like what's going on with that game. But I had a lot of fun with it, and I don't know if I'll talk about it more in some other form or not. I basically am done with the demo at this point, but I feel like I could probably do more with it. I also started uploading some footage to my second channel. If you don't know, I made another YouTube channel, which I'll talk about a little bit later. That's like an archive channel. So I had uploaded a bunch of Solomon program footage that I recorded on that channel if you just want to see some raw gameplay as well. And I'll link that in the description too. And then finally, I actually got around to playing the Smash Brothers DLC. I hadn't bought it before and kept telling myself I would. Around the time Hero was announced, I was actually like, oh, I'm actually really interested in checking out Hero as a character. So I played a handful of hours of that this weekend, and mostly only kind of touched on each of the DLC characters, but I think the really, really good ones, I'll just go in the order of which I believe they came out. Joker I didn't really love. He's kind of weird because he has like a phase where he's like pretty weak, and then he kind of goes into like a stronger phase, and so you have to kind of, time out when you try to kill people. I don't know how much I like that, honestly. But I think he plays fine as a character, and it seems like he's, pretty decently balanced. Hero I didn't spend a lot of time on, but he just felt a little difficult to use. Like he just, there wasn't a lot of flow to his moveset, and I think I just need to spend a lot more time with him. But I really had a hard time, choosing his like spells and skills from his menu that pops up on the bottom of the screen. And then he has a couple of charged sword skills as well that I just didn't really get to flow properly. But I didn't spend a lot of time with him, so I might sit down and try to give him some more love at some point. Banjo I also really didn't like very much. He just felt he felt very powerful, but he didn't feel like he had I think it comes out of the same thing as Hero. Like he didn't have like a flow to him. It felt very like single strike kind of. But I'm saying this as somebody who's barely touching these things. What is the competitive scene of Smash Brothers? I don't know. And then there was Terry Bogard, and I really liked Terry Bogard. When I was playing him, he felt a little overpowered when you start using his inputs. He has a lot of very explosive moves, and I feel like they're all very quick. The only thing is I'm not a huge fan of, putting in controller inputs for those kind of skills and stuff, but it's a silly enough gimmick that I don't know if it really fits Smash Brothers, but it's fun that the fighting game characters have something that closely represent how they would play in other games. So I did very much like Terry Bogard, though. He's just a really strong, heavy hitter and just feels like he's really easy to get KOs with. And then finally, there's a Byleth, I think is his or her name, their name, I guess. And I like Byleth a lot. The fact that, people always are like, oh no, sword boys. I mean, Byleth has a sword, but it's very minimal in terms of their moveset, so it didn't really matter that much. And they're a really fun character, very slow. It feels definitely not like the other Marth-style characters. Like even Roy, who's kind of the slow, heavy hitter of that group of characters outside of Ike, I guess. Ike might be the more apt comparison, but even compared to like a Roy and a Ike, Byleth just feels a little chunkier. It just doesn't have the flexibility that those characters have. Because even though Ike is like very heavy, he has a pretty long range with like his side B and up B and things like that. Anyways, so I enjoyed all 5 characters to a certain degree. I don't think I'll ever really touch Banjo again, and I don't think I'll ever really put the time into Joker that I would want, but I think everyone else I would like to spend more time with, although I may have spent enough time with Terry when playing. Terry's just so devastating. I guess maybe if I ever sit down and just do some For Glory Online, Terry might be fun to kind of poke around, see how people exploit his weaknesses and things like that. And that's kind of it for games I played this week. So I haven't worked on any of the 2019 games, unfortunately, outside of God Eater 2, but we're getting there. We're getting there. Solomon Program took up a chunk of my weekend, that's for sure, as well as the Smash Brothers DLC. In terms of game news this week, there's just a few stories I would like to poke at real quick, but I don't really have a ton to say about most of them. If you didn't see the Gunvolt Striker Pack, which is the Gunvolt 1 and 2 collection, it's coming to PlayStation 4, finally. It's not coming to Xbox, though, even though the Luminous Avenger G game or whatever it's called. I never know how to pronounce the XI. I don't know. The Luminous Avenger game, that one did come to Xbox One, is not coming to the Striker Pack, so far at least, is not coming to Xbox One. That being said, integrates as in a giant team, so it could very much just be a priority thing at this time. I'd be really curious to see how the Luminous Avengers sales were compared between PS4 and Xbox One, because both PS4 and Xbox One didn't have any kind of history of Gunvolt on them at the time. Now that PS4 is getting Gunvolt 1 and 2, it does at this point, but I wonder how people just jumped in blind to that spin-off of Gunvolt onto the PS4. If you want to call it a spin-off, it's very similar mechanically to 2. The more platforms play Gunvolt 1 and 2, the better. I think it's only been on PC, 3DS, and Switch in the past, so getting it on a platform that is, not a Nintendo platform or a PC platform is cool. And then there's also a Captain Tsubasa game that was announced. I don't know anything about Captain Tsubasa as an anime. I had a friend who was pretty into it, but I never really asked too much about it or anything. I just knew that they liked it. But this was Captain Tsubasa Rise of the New Champions, and this is I think it's a Switch-specific title right now. I could be wrong about that. But it's basically just a soccer game with some really explosive over-the-top moves and stuff, which I think is cool. You don't get a ton of, I think, arcade-style sports games these days between, the FIFAs and stuff like that. The Maddens, you don't really get a Mutant League football very often anymore, although I think people do try to make spiritual successors to that. So getting anime sports games is kind of a fun thing because they are over the top in their own way. And in the case of Captain Tsubasa, it looks very much like a typical soccer game, but you have super moves and stuff that have really flashy animations. And some of the moves are really good at emulating the show's style. I don't know if you've ever seen Captain Tsubasa before, but that show has a very particular look, or I imagine it was originally a manga probably too. It has a very particular look, and sometimes those looks don't always look good, but they perfectly emulate it not looking very good at times. But I'm sure when in saying that they emulate it not looking good, it that's just a charm of the show at this point, or a charm of nostalgia around it. So being able to recreate how kind of funky those character models look at time is an impressive in its own way. Reminded me a lot of Ice Shield 21, which I thought about as well because of the Super Bowl being yesterday. So that's a game I also need to get around to trying. I saw a copy I was in Japan, but I think it was like $12, and that seemed a little high. I mean, I don't really know the Japanese market super well, but I felt like I probably could try to get it from like at least Vink with Famicom Dojo or with Japan Retro Direct, slightly easier. In saying that, I have not asked him what the price is, so that is not a quote by me of how much he charges for Ice Shield 21. But I felt like it probably was something I could get similarly priced or quite a bit cheaper on the Wii. Also a DS version as well, but I never really bothered looking too much at that version of the game. But now that I can do DS emulation on a Wii U, I might consider it. Actually, it's somebody who was talking to me about saying that actual DS capture cards for the original DS are not that expensive. So I might poke around and take a look at that. But at the same time, if not that quote not that expensive is still hundreds of dollars, I think at this point I'm not ready to really dump the money into that. Still waiting to see if there's like a 3DS solution that comes about. I'm really hoping there is. I haven't been keeping an eye on it, but last I had heard, basically one dude was looking at making his own 3DS capture cards, but also said it was like 36th on his list of things to do when he's not at work. So, and finally, one other thing that I really can't say too much about the story itself is that Beep is publishing a game called Govelis. I believe it's just a redistribution of an old 1980s MSX title. And I guess I just wanted to kind of use this opportunity to say that Beep is a very interesting place. It was one of the places I really wanted to go to when I was in Japan. I don't remember if I talked about it much when I talked about my Japanese shopping stuff. But that's a really, really fascinating place to go to. And seeing them do these little independent publishing projects with Cotton and things like that. I think Cotton's that's that on-rail shooter with the Witch Girl, I think, right? I don't remember, man. But when I was there, they did have a bunch of original works and stuff like that, and board games that were based off old IPs and things like that. And had PC98 and PC88 games and stuff like that there. It's a really, really interesting shop. And I also felt like the prices didn't seem that crazy, at least from a lot of the stuff I looked up online later. It felt like their pricing was pretty reasonable. But maybe if you're there to buy stuff that is, buy PC98 games, you're not necessarily purchasing what normal things are. I wasn't looking at the Super Nintendo prices, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Looking at the pricing of things that would be more desirable overall, probably. I guess I was just really surprised though. I would expect Beep to have marked up a bunch, but even when I was looking at their PC98 games, the pricing on it compared to Traders, I think is where I got my other PC98 games, was significantly less. The only reason I didn't buy most of my stuff from Beep for PC98 games is because the days that I was planning on shopping for those, Beep was actually closed because of the holidays and stuff like that. But yeah, interesting store. Basically just a mix of a retro PC and gaming store kind of thing. You should look it up if you haven't heard of it. And in talking about Beep, I actually did start to actually set up my PC98 a little bit. I went ahead and put the sound card in, which was surprisingly not difficult, but it was kind of scary because I was trying to put the card in. It wasn't going in all the way. Apparently, I just need to push really hard to get it in there, and it eventually slipped in. But the next part, problem I have is I need to figure out the power situation with it. I do have a power cable that came with it, along with a little grounding wire kind of thing. But I need to make sure that, how I'm hooking it up isn't going to blow everything up. So I got to do research on that. But before that, I decided to go ahead and work out the video situation, which if you don't know, I think it's a 15-pin RGB monitor port is on the back of that thing. So I'm basically what I'm trying to do, whether or not this works or not, I'm not sure yet. But what I'm trying to do is I'm converting that port into a VGA connection, which I'm then connecting up to a it's called a sync combiner. I bought it from the same company who did the Dreamcast box I have, VGA box I have. I think it's like Bear Bros or something like that. It's like a Turkish company. So then I bought that sync combiner, which I then had to buy like a power adapter for, because I'm pretty sure it's not like the VGA cable, even though it technically can send power through it, to my understanding, is not. It probably won't actually be sending any power through it. So I went ahead and bought an adapter to connect to the sync combiner, which then will feed into my current setup through my SCART connections. But, it being a Japanese SCART connection, I have to I have to convert it from a European SCART connection to a Japanese one so I can get it to my FrameMeister. But really the biggest part that I'm doing is the converting the actual port to VGA, and then also connecting that to a sync combiner and stuff. So I think that should work. I mean, the thing is that when I look up PC98, like connecting that to modern TVs, I didn't really find a lot of like direct resources of like, hey, this is how you do it. It's more of people who have tried different things and have gotten it to work. A lot of the times, I think people are not trying to capture footage when they do it. So it's maybe a little more information that I need to set it up on my side. A lot of the posts online I saw were just like, hey, you need to buy a compatible NEC monitor or whatever, but that obviously doesn't really help me in terms of capturing the gameplay. So right now I'm mostly just focusing on trying to figure out how I can get that console to feed directly into my capture setup, so I can A, record it, and then B, just to play it on my own TV screen if possible. I'd rather not buy another CRT monitor kind of thing. I don't really have a good pivot for this, but one other thing I've been doing as well is, like I said before in a previous podcast, trying to get back into speedrunning, or like watching speedrunning a little bit, not actually speedrunning. I've only ever done one speedrun in my life, and I beat Ocarina of Time like 42 minutes or something like that at some point. But yeah, I've been watching speedrunning stuff again. I think Zelda is just like my comfort zone in terms of speedrunning stuff, because all the games run on a similar engine. It's interesting to see like what tricks carry over between them all, and also what's different at the same time. And I actually have experience watching a lot of Ocarina of Time speedrunning as well as Wind Waker speedrunning. Little less so Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess. Skyward Sword, also a little light on that. Although I feel like I have a decent understanding of what goes on in a Skyward Sword run. But so mainly I've been watching like ZFG with like Ocarina of Time stuff recently. And then I think it's like Linkus for Wind Waker and Gymnaster or something like that. So that's been somewhat fun. It's interesting to see how those games have developed, and it's been a very interesting time to come back to Ocarina of Time right now, because there's basically they found a way to write code to the game at this point. They call it ACE, which is like arbitrary code execution kind of thing. So it's actually knocked down the any percent speed run to like, if not less than 10 minutes, pretty dang close to 10 minutes. And they basically do a bunch of stuff to write a bunch of code to the game using like a slingshot and the file names of their files on their system. I could go more in depth to it, but I'd probably butcher it anyways. But it's been interesting to see. It was a good time to come back to it, because there's just so much development happening right now. And also, I was also looking at one of Link's stream for Wind Waker tonight, and it sounds like a lot of stuff's happening there too. Like a large portion of the back half of the run sounds like it's being changed about due to some new skips they found and things like that. So enjoying that. I don't know if there's really anything I'll ever be able to say about speedrunning long term that's interesting beyond me just being like, oh, I watched the speedrun, it was pretty cool. But I am enjoying it, and it's thankfully, I've been needing stuff to have on in the background for a long time. So I'm glad that it seems like speedrunning is sticking right now. Like I said, very interesting time in the Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker speedrunning spaces right now, and those are also just happened to be the two games I was most familiar with in the past. So once things settle down in that space, will I continue to want to watch it? We'll see. It's nice to have it on in the background though, while I'm working on other things. Speaking of working on other things, a couple things I'm doing right now. A Tokadol script didn't really move from last weekend, but that's fine. I made a good progress on it last weekend, so I didn't mind so much that I didn't really touch it. The big progress I made this weekend is Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country video. I'm about 3/4 of the way done through the initial draft of the video itself. I had to make some last minute adjustments to the script. I think it's one of those ones again where the script kind of came together somewhat quickly at the end, and so while I'm editing the video, I'm kind of noticing some of the bits and pieces that I might want to change, because I didn't really give myself the time in the main text editing process. So I'm doing some hot adjusting at the beginning of the video, but I think it's come together pretty well. And even though it's one of those hard things, because like it's been so long since I've played the game, I had written down my thoughts before about the game, but it's been so long since I've played it, it's a little hard to be passionate about the video, and it's right now. And when I was editing it, I felt a little like, oh man, is this gonna be any good? But in rewatching what I've done so far, I feel pretty good about at the work that's gone in it to, at the moment. So obviously, I don't think it's what people want from me 100%, because they want random obscure Japanese games. But it's been something I've been wanting to get off my chest for a long time, is talking about that game. So hopefully, if you value my opinion, even on more popular games, hopefully you'll watch it and enjoy it. I think Torn of the Golden Country is a great entry in the Xeno franchise, if not one of the best. But yeah. And then also, I mentioned it last week, I have a second YouTube channel that I've opened up called OCP Archiving, which is One Controller Port Archiving. And I'm basically just uploading, right now, stuff that's a little harder to find. So you have Tokadol gameplay there. I also uploaded all my Solomon program gameplay there as well. And as of this recording right now, I've uploaded the 24 Tokyo playthrough I did. But I plan to just upload, I think, all my footage there, like which might seem a little wasteful, but the logic is that, and I could be wrong, maybe this exists on the internet somewhere, but something I had trouble finding was I had this weird desire to just like watch random video games without like any context or logic. So yes, I can find 100 PlayStation 1 games or something like that, and just like, select that, and watch a video of like somebody showing off 100 PlayStation 1 games. But I wanted like a playlist that was literally just like, here are unorganized video game gameplay. It's here. If you want to put it on shuffle and just like end up, clicking through these videos, you could do that. And so I'm kind of just uploading this like giant playlists of stuff, and I'm not aware if YouTube has any caps on playlists, but I kind of just want a giant playlist where you can just click shuffle and you just get like a random bit of a game kind of thing. It probably won't be organized. I very much is not going to be organized probably. And a lot of times the games may not even be labeled early, because I'm just dropping them in there from my video folder, and I don't know if it will really serve my purpose very well, like in terms of what I want to watch, because obviously I've already played all that stuff, so in watching randomized footage, I don't know how much value I'll get out of it. But my website is basically me just trying to do things that I personally would desire for content, and apparently that's what I've decided that I'm doing at the moment. So, like I said, that's going on an alternate YouTube channel though, so you don't have to worry about your current YouTube feed being flooded with me just uploading a bunch of raw gameplay for a bunch of stuff. I'm still trying to brand the account. I figured I'll probably use the same logo, but maybe a different color version of the logo. I haven't really figured that out yet. But right now it's just pretty plain. Just set up some playlists on it, things like that. And thankfully it's pretty easy to just basically set stuff to upload and then like forget about it. How my bandwidth feels about that's a whole other thing, but it's fine. And that's kind of it for this week. Like I said, last week I did that Solomon program stream, so if you want to check that out, it's there. I also did a in that same stream, but I split it up into 2 separate videos at this point. I also did a second part to my Dojin game pickups video, so if you want to see some stuff there, you can do that. And then also, and that's just like the weekly stream sections of both my website and YouTube. Also, I'm still working on that Xenoblade Chronicles 2 video, so that's kind of long. And I'm hoping that's going to be done early this month. I would rather get it, if I can get it out the second week of February, I will do that. We'll see where I'm at, because I haven't finished the complete draft of the video yet. I don't have 100% certainty that I'll be done super soon, but looking at what the video is and how much is left, I get the feeling it will be ready sooner rather than later. But I'll give you updates as that come along, and then hopefully we can, get some actual real content on this channel rather than just podcasts and streams all the time. Although it seems like people are enjoying the Dojin game streams, which makes me happy. We'll be returning back to Martian Gothic next week, though. So if you were interested in where Martian Gothic was going, feel free to tune in next week at this week rather, Thursday at 7:00 Pacific time. And like I said before, or like I've said other weeks, I guess, the podcast, if you don't already know, it goes up every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific time as well. And that's gonna do it for this week. Thanks for coming. Hopefully my sleep schedule is basically fixed at this point, but at the same time I get tired super early because I'm on an old man sleep schedule now. So it's a little difficult to function at the times I normally would be, but I'm also waking up quite a bit earlier. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, honestly, but probably a good thing for my sleep balance in life. But yeah. Anyways, thanks again for coming. OneControlReport.com is the website, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.